Some of us have enough to get by, and some have a lot of surplus, and some of them come to the Philippines because they can't afford to live in America, right? The thing in America was it's just getting so polarized. You're either this political party or that political party, or this race or that race. And nobody's in a hurry, but sometimes that gets on my nerves. I don't have anything to do all day, but that half an hour really burns me up. I think the biggest misconception I see is the ones who
Good afternoon, sir. Can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. I'm Jay Sutton. I'm from the United States, most recently from Virginia, currently living here in the Philippines over in Ahoy on Iloilo.
What originally inspired you to come to the Philippines?
Well, it was interesting. Many years ago, around 2012, something like that, I had a LDS missionary living with me, and he was from the Philippines. And he was the kindest, most pleasant young man I ever saw. And I became very interested in the Philippines ever since. And so last year I was coming over to do some charity work. And in the meantime, as I was looking around, I met my what's currently wife online. And so I was coming for 2 weeks at that time, but because we met, I ended up staying for 2 months, and then went back home and came back this fall and got married this October.
That's beautiful, Jay. How old is your wife and how old are you, Jay?
So I am 68 and she is 53, and so yeah, there's a few years difference. A little further than I like, really. I that was one of the first things I said to her was that you're too young for me. You're too young for me. But I know that a lot of people really stretch that age. There's people older than me who's got wives in their 20s or early 30s, right? And I'm just not into that. I'm much more comfortable with somebody closer to my
So
age.
it sounded like at first you weren't comfortable with the age gap, but now things
Yeah,
are
it's
going
not a
quite
big
well.
deal. Yeah. It's not a big deal. It's never an issue.
I'm just wondering, Jay, has the Philippines met your expectations so far?
Yeah, I love the Philippines, and for the most part, the Philippine people are very pleasant. They love foreigners. They're always open to talk to you. Some of them are very shy about speaking English. You get it in Manila, everybody speaks pretty good English, or most people speak good English in Manila. But when you get out of Manila, people are kind of shy about speaking English. But they all understand it, so it's easy to, communicate. And the biggest disappointment I think is the noise levels for me.
Mm. And on average, about how much money are you spending to live in Iloilo?
You know, spend 4,000 a month or something. And my rent right now is incredibly cheap, right? We've stayed in a lot of condos. We're staying in a condo while we're here. So even though, we have a house that we rented, we're for a week right over here in a condo. And so, but we don't go elaborate with condos. There's a lot of condos you can rent for $35 a night, right? Which is just crazy cheap, for, some mid-rise building, be on the 30th floor of a building, a swimming pool and fitness rooms and everything else. And it's $35 a night. That's kind of crazy if you're from America. And,
Yeah.
uh, but but yeah, I just kind of started tracking my expenses because I realized, I'm spending a lot of money and I don't know where it's all going. Because one of the things in the Philippines is most people don't take a card, right? So you're always just pulling money out of the ATM and stuffing cash in your wallet. And then it's like, okay, I got 10,000 pesos last week. It's all gone. Where did that go? I have no idea, right? So I just started tracking it the first of the month. And so it'll be interesting to see where that's all going.
Do you notice some tendencies where your money seems to be going? Maybe a lot of people are going to wonder, are you helping out your wife's family a lot?
Well, I do, I did give them all Christmas money today we give them, all some Christmas money, but they're my kids. I give my kids Christmas money every year, right? So now my family went from 3 kids to 7 kids, and so yeah, the Christmas budget got bigger. But I give my wife an allowance, right? She doesn't work, and I want her to feel like she's got some freedom to do with whatever she wants, with a certain percentage of the budget. So I give her an allowance to do whatever she wants, whether she wants to give that to her kids or whether she wants to spend it on herself. It's totally up to her, and because as an American, we think differently. Filipinos are very, very helpful to one another within their family, right? If one person can be very irresponsible with how they spent their money, but now their rent's due, and the rest of the family will just kick in for them and kind of, in my opinion, enable them to be irresponsible with their money, right? And because they know that the family's always going to kick in and bail them out, and they always end up paying them. Well, I don't know if they always do, but from what I've seen, they end up, reimbursing them and getting caught up and everything. But, in America, we don't think like that. If we all have credit cards and debit, we can go into debt real easy if we get behind and start raising our credit limits up before we have to ever ask family for money. But here it's very common to, and so I told her, I said, I don't want to get in the habit of just bailing out your family. For one, they've been helping you support you since your husband died 4 years ago. They've been helping support you, and now that gives them more money because they're no longer supporting you. So that gives them a raise. The less money they have to, so that's stopped. Their contribution to you has stopped. So that's our first contribution to them, is they're no longer have to give you money. And so then I give her some allowance, and I don't really know where most of that allowance goes, but I just told her it depends on how responsible you are with that money in whether I increase the allowance or decrease the allowance, right?
Yeah,
So that, uh, but yeah, I know it's very common for a lot of expats to. I've seen a lot of them complain about the fact that they have to help their spouse, but if you come over here, you're 60 years old and you marry a 25-year-old and tell her, oh, I don't want you to work, but then you don't want to give them money, that's kind of a bad situation, because normally that 25-year-old is working and helping support her parents or something, right? And now you're not giving her the opportunity to work, but you don't want her to be able to support her family, right? You're not allowing her to help out. And I think that's just wrong. You should, and that's the way I've handled it. Of course, her parents aren't living, but I just give her allowance to do with what she wants, right? And
yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially because if when the wife has children, the children are going to want things,
yeah,
and it's really not a good feeling if the wife has to say, "I don't have any money actually."
right.
And like you said, she's not working, so therefore it's acceptable to support her. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I just want to ask, do you ever feel like you're being taken advantage of at all?
And no, never, never, never with her family do I feel like, that they're just like, oh, mom's married an American now, so we're all rich, because that's kind of the common thought in the Philippines, is if you're an American, you're rich. you know Not all Americans are rich, right? Some of us have enough to get by, and some have a lot of surplus, and some are just bare. Some of them come to the Philippines because they can't afford to live in America, right? And I think they're probably, shocked at that it's not as cheap as a lot of people think to live here. A lot of the groceries are more expensive here than they are in America, right? But you can live pretty cheap. You can go out to eat, for, you know $10, two of you can eat, right? And you can't go to Burger King yourself and eat for less than $10 in America anymore.
Yeah. And there are quite a lot of expats who come here retired and struggle on Social Security. I do want to ask, what was your profession when you were in the States?
I worked in IT, and so I retired from Bank of America as in cybersecurity, and and I'd done some real estate investing on the side. I like to invest in homes and flip them, fix and flip kind of stuff. So I've done a few of those as well, and I would still love to do more of that. When I get back to America, I want to stay active and young, but we'll be here for. We haven't even applied for her visa yet, so we're not in a big hurry. But eventually, we'll have a visa and take her to America and travel in America. For the next year or two, we'll be traveling around the Philippines, looking at all the beautiful places there are to see here, right? And and then we'll do the same in America. But
I wanted to ask if you're enjoying the slower pace of life here in the Philippines.
I love the slower pace of life. So yeah, I love the slower pace of life in the Philippines. I love to stay busy, and so I don't like to just sit on the couch in the day. I'm just not, I'm just not comfortable with that. We get out and do a lot of walking and exploring. That's one of the reasons I liked the Iloilo City, was it was just very walkable. We would walk in the morning first thing for an hour or so. Midday when it was hot, we'd go swimming for a while, and then in the evening walk again. And it's so nice. But yeah, the thing in America was it's just getting so polarized, and you're either this political party or that political party, or this race or that race. It's just so, you're just compartmentalized. Everybody, you fit in this bucket and you're judged based on whatever bucket you're in. And I just don't feel any of that here. Nobody cares about your race. Well, that's, I guess, because everybody, for the most part, are the same race, right? To, for the most part, right? And a lot of Asians from Korea and Japan and China here, but you can hardly tell them apart anyway, right? And so race is not an issue here, and there are a lot of foreigners like us here, but but we fit right in. I don't know about you, but I have never, other than some people just kind of stare at you, but for the most part, especially like the young teens, they're just so excited to talk to Americans, right? And the young girls are always like, "Oh, I love your eyes. You have blue eyes," and because they never see it, right? And it just, and they're not shy about talking about it. It's kind of awkward, with a 12-year-old. "Oh, I love your eyes," and it's like, okay, yeah, they're blue,
Mm.
but yeah, yeah, nobody's in a hurry, but sometimes that gets on my nerves. It's when in America we're used to going in a store, you pick an item off the shelf, you go scan it, and you walk out. And we went and bought something. What was it? Oh, we went and bought her aunt and uncle, because we stayed with them for a couple of weeks when we come out, and their little stovetop burner went out on them, and or they were having troubles with it. And I said, let's just go buy them a new one. And so we go in to buy one, uh, and it takes like a half an hour to buy it. You talk to a salesperson, he writes up the ticket, then they open the box, they inspect it, and take it all apart and show you how it works, put it all back together. If it's an electric fan or something, they'll take it out of the box, plug it in, show you it works, because their return policies are terrible. They don't like to take anything back. And so they want to say, yeah, it works. You can't say it didn't work when it left here, right? And but and then you go sit in a seat, and then the cashier will eventually get to your ticket and then have you come and pay it. And that process, as an American, you're like, why does this have to be so complicated? We just spent a half an hour, but I don't have anything to do all day, but that half an hour really burns me up for some reason, and it's like it's a half an hour I didn't need to be there, is the way I look at it. But that part kind of, or the whole process of anything to do with paperwork. I had originally applied for an SSRV so I could travel here. For those who don't know, it's a senior citizens retirement visa, and so it's through the retirement authority versus the immigration. And you put up some money up front, you get this visa, you can come and go, you can buy property. You can't buy land, but you can buy a condo or own a business, and you can come and go all you want into the country. And so I started applying for that, but then once I realized I was going to get married, I said, well, I don't need this visa. I can get a 13A marriage visa. And so I canceled that visa, and before I flew back last time, and I had to put up $10,000 deposit for the visa. It took me over 8 months to get the $10,000 back. It's supposed to take 6 weeks, but because they didn't follow the wire instructions properly, then my bank sent it back to them, and but they just don't have the ability. My bank, I called them up and said, hey, I've got this receipt from the Philippine Retirement Authority that they wired me $10,000, but I don't see it in my account. Where's it at? And they said, oh, we sent it back. My bank said we returned it the same day because they didn't have the forwarding instructions on the wire. But it took them 8 months to figure it out, and I think the only reason they did is because I kept escalating it up above them, and I escalated it to the ombudsman, and a couple weeks after I sent it to them, then they finally figured out how to get the money back.
What's your healthcare advice for people living in the Philippines? Do you recommend they have a lump sum of money set to the side? Do you recommend insurance? Do you have?
You know, my advice would be tell me what you think, because I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. My thing is I hope I stay healthy, you know, and I'm very healthy, but yeah, I mean, I have my Medicare from America, but that does me no good here. I've heard people say a Filipino American that was traveling, I met him in the airport and was talking to him, and they said that they just get travel insurance, and they'll come and stay for months, and they just get travel insurance. And so I'm thinking, you could probably just buy a travel insurance that's good for a year, and wherever and whenever you travel, it covers your medical expenses wherever you're at.
Is there anything that the YouTube vlogs portray incorrectly? Would you say?
I think the biggest misconception I see is the ones who will constantly talk about how cheap it is to live here. You know, I don't think you can live here for well, you probably could, but you'd live like a poor Filipino if you tried to live on 2,000 a month.
What would be your best advice for an expat looking to retire in the Philippines?
Unless you want to live in a condo, you need to have a high tolerance for noise, because if you live in a subdivision, some of the newer subdivisions prohibit noise, right? But roosters and karaoke and that. But otherwise, you better expect to be noisy. You're going to hear roosters everywhere you go, which I don't mind, right? But the constant loud music, I like music and I like loud music if it's my music and what I want to listen to. But I don't want to listen to somebody else's music when I'm home trying to think and do something. And just the day before we came here, 16 hours nonstop, the neighbors had a birthday party. 16 hours nonstop of blaring music. And it gets on my nerves. So just be prepared for that. And then as far as driving, I kind of enjoy the driving, but the thing to understand about driving is there's There's no such thing as the right of way. Nobody has the right of way here. And if there's a gap, the first one to it gets it, right? And so it's a very different. People. It's can be very scary driving here. You'll be going down a road out in the middle of nowhere, 4-lane road, national highway, and you'll be on the inside lane because the outside lanes are usually kind of sketchy to drive in. There's always people just randomly jumping out into it, or something just parked there or whatever. And unless you can see a long ways ahead of you, you don't want to drive in that right hand lane. And but you'll be in the inside lane, and next thing you know, there's a Cirrus bus coming right at you, and they don't care if there's a vehicle to pass. They'll come towards you because they just expect you to move over, and that's kind of odd for us, but that's the way they drive here, and they get along. It works fine. You Once you know that's just how it is, you see that bus coming, you better get over, right? And so driving is a lot different, but I kind of like it. We have our scooter here we brought from Elo. We come over a ferry and brought it here, and we've been driving around, and it's very interesting driving here. Get your adrenaline going pretty quick.
Ultimately, do you feel like you're happier here in the Philippines?
Yeah, yeah, I do. But on the other hand, I'll be glad to get back to America. Some of the things that I find it hard. I like most of the Filipino food, but there's things that I really like that's hard to find here. I love cheese. Good cheese is hard to find. Unless you go to the S&R warehouse or something, you can get some stuff. But pickles are hard to find. A good hamburger is hard to find. But the food here is good, and I love variety as far as food goes. So
Anything else you'd like to share with the viewers today, Jay?
I wouldn't discourage anybody from taking the lunch to come to the Philippines and enjoy it. The weather is it can't be beat. A lot of the Filipinos say, "Oh, I know for an American the weather is so hot and hard here," but no, it's not harsh at all. If you're from the southern half of America, uh, this is a lot cooler weather here any day of the year than it is back home for half of the year, right? And so the weather here is nice, and one of the things about it is very consistent. It's either raining or not, but other than that, it's the same, every day.
Well, this has been great, Jay. Thank you so much. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please share, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.